I did. I did.
I retweeted his. We're good.
Yep. 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 Okay. Okay. What's up, Dolphins fans? Chris Perkins, your Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist, along with David Furones, your Sun Sentinel Dolphins writer, and three-game losing streak. Nobody expected this, but the injuries, the injuries remain the problem. They're worse. I mean, quarterback Tua Tagovailoa returns this week against Pittsburgh for the Sunday night game, but we still got to watch left tackle Teron Armstead with his toe. We've got to watch cornerbacks Kader Kohu and Keon Crossan. Kohu missed the last game with the oblique, Keon Crossan with the knee injury. And the penalties creeping up. Special teams play slipping a little bit. Offense not scoring touchdowns on a regular basis. Defense not producing turnovers on a regular basis. But look, here's the good thing, Dolphins fans. The Dolphins are entering their quote-unquote soft part of the schedule. You got Pittsburgh at 2-4. At Detroit, they're 1-4. At Chicago, they're 2-4. Against Cleveland and against Houston, Cleveland 2-4. Against Houston, they're 1-3-1. But on the other hand, I thought the Jets and the Vikings were the soft part of the schedule, and we see what happened there. So let's dive in. Let's talk about what's going on with these Miami Dolphins, folks. Furones, Tua comes back this week. What are you expecting to be different? We saw Tua's accuracy. We saw how effective he was at getting the ball to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle so they could get the yards after catch. What do you expect to be different when Tua comes back on Sunday?
Well, obviously, it's a huge boost to the team when you've lost 3 in a row. You haven't had Tua Tagovailoa for most of those 3 games, 2 of them in their entirety, and then obviously the crushing blow when he goes down with the concussion second quarter and is taken off the field in a stretcher in Cincinnati. So the team has had to, and not only that, every other quarterback that comes in then can't finish a game. Every time a quarterback starts, they're not able to finish. So that's 3 consecutive games where that happens, and it results in 3 consecutive losses. That's not all there is to it. Of course, we're going to talk about it plenty more in the show, how Mike McDaniel is not looking to let that be an excuse. I can make it an excuse for the team, speaking on the outside. It's hard to win that way. And there's been a number of other things, the injuries at other positions, the penalties that you mentioned. One thing we look at is Tua Tagovailoa, the way he has built chemistry very quickly with Tyreek Hill, and then the chemistry that he's always had with Jalen Waddle going back to college. So having him throwing to his top 2 receivers, I mean, Hill and Waddle have still been able to get their numbers even as Teddy and Skyler have come in. We saw last game they were both over 100, and Tyreek Hill had a third game where he was 10-plus receptions, 150 yards, 3 times in the first 6 games, which is a first in Dolphins history. And, to already have 50 receptions at this point in the year, his 701 yards, that's most that a Dolphin has ever had through 6 games, topping Mark Duper's record through this mark. The yak that they get because of his ball placement, although they are both very high in yak already, ranking top 10 and top 5 overall, with Tyreek Hill leading the league and Jalen Waddle number 5 in the league in receiving yards. But just look for all of that to kind of get amplified even more, that Tagovailoa, with his accuracy, his ball placement, anticipation, getting those guys in position to make big plays, even if they're short, intermediate routes, being able to turn that into big plays, and just elevating kind of that chemistry that we saw early on in the year, bringing it back now after it's been a while since they've been together.
Yeah, and look, and this is a big week for the Dolphins on the field and off the field, and we're going to go to our first Twitter question here. Always appreciate you guys responding with the Twitter questions when requested. Our first question, speaking of returns, comes at us from Steel Core 1974, and the question is, when will Ross get out of Dodge? When will we get back to our true colors and real and true logo? Well, this is the wrong week to be asking that. Steve Ross returns this week. And speaking of other off-field stuff, the 1972 Dolphins are going to be honored this week. But, Furones, when we look at Steve Ross and his ownership here, that it's been rough recently. Maybe the 3-game losing streak ends this week, and Steve Ross gets back, and everything, Tua is back, and everything keeps going the right way. But I don't see any fault with Steve Ross's ownership at this point of the season, as far as he gave them resources to go out and get what they wanted. We'll get back into the personnel with trade possibilities and everything else, but I don't see Steve Ross being a problem in any way right now. And I know the question is not about Ross right now, but I think that Steve Ross has been a pretty good owner. I know he just cost the franchise a first-round pick, but I think all things considered, I think he's been a pretty good owner. What are your thoughts on Steve Ross?
Well, yeah, and that echoes kind of what Mike McDaniel said. I asked him yesterday about having him back. What, if any, impact does that have on a team? What he alluded to was, that he's going to be happy to get to talk to him again, that he hasn't been able to speak with him a lot recently. Obviously, he's been away. I know, confirmed with a league spokesperson that he was allowed to attend games. I'm not sure how much we've seen him, if he actually has gone through with that, because I know, at least, I don't think cameras have been catching him at games in any box or anything. But he was not banned from attending games. He could still go, but just not allowed to be around team facilities. That suspension is over as of today. Yesterday, Monday, October 17th, was the last day. According to that release, when the tampering penalties came down on the Dolphins. So obviously, I mean, now if we go back in history, sure, there's a lot maybe at fault with Ross and aspects of his ownership. I think this new regime that he's brought in, you can't really blame too much on him. They did lose that first-round pick, so as far as in season, his absence, his suspension, his fine is not really going to be, you're not going to pin that on losing 3 games, or conversely, starting 3-0 before that, that's not on the owner. Now, later, once you get to the offseason and you're reminded, oh, yeah, why do the Dolphins only have 1 first-round pick this year, which is the 49ers, which they had to trade for and, lose previous capital to move down in the 2020 or 2021 draft for that, then, yeah, you're going to be reminded of that Dolphins first-round pick that they don't have. But as far as this year now, he's going to be back. What Mike McDaniel said is just he and the whole team, Chris Greer, players, appreciate that he gives the team, the franchise, the resources it needs. You do see it with the new facility in Miami Gardens, which is state-of-the-art, a significant upgrade from where they were in Davie. So now he's back, and I know the biggest thing he would want is to get one, stick it to Brian Flores, whose entire mission since being fired has been to get back at the Dolphins with this class action lawsuit. The Dolphins and the NFL at large, alleging the racist hiring and coaching retention practices that the league has seen, and specifically getting at Steve Ross with all his allegations, the tampering, which was proven by the league's investigation, and then the tanking aspect of it, the $100,000 offer that was maybe meant to be taken seriously, maybe not, but NFL deemed it was taken to be in jest. Shouldn't have been taken to be a serious offer. So the Dolphins were penalized for only the tampering aspect with Tom Brady and also Sean Payton this past offseason, and not the tanking allegations in 2019.
Yeah, so Steve Ross is going to come back. He's one of the people that will be returning to the Dolphins this week. Let's get back to the on-field returns, Furones. And look, pass protection is a major concern. I think the quarterbacks, off the top of my head, I think Skyler took 16 hits against the Jets, and then quarterbacks took 13 hits last week. I believe that those are the correct numbers, but we're going to be looking for Teron Armstead to come back at left tackle. We'll see what happens with Austin Jackson at right tackle. But the pass protection is one of those things that has to be right, because you need that time to throw. And I'm not even getting into the quarterback injuries here. You just have to have time to get the ball to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And, I mentioned those two. You need to get it to Mike Gesicki and, River Craycraft and everybody else. But let's face it, Tyreek is your offense, right? And then to a lesser extent, it's Jalen Waddle. So the pass protection, and then we know that to get into the injury thing, we know that Tua has already had a concussion, and once you have one, you're more susceptible to another. So, Furones, I will throw this to you, along with who should be the number 2 quarterback. I know that Mike McDaniel said it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater. He said that last week. But with Tua, what needs to happen with pass protection? I'm going to say the number one thing is Teron Armstead coming back. And that's the first one. And the second thing, are you concerned whether there is going to be a quick hook on Tua from the spotter or from the UNC, the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant, because he has already sustained a concussion? That could be something to watch as well.
Well, not only because Tua Tagovailoa has recently sustained a concussion, but I mean, some spotters just have a quick hook regardless. We saw that at MetLife Stadium, first play of the game from alleged stumble for Teddy Bridgewater that we still have not seen visual evidence of, and I don't think the NFL is going to revisit. We had some of our fellow beat writers, follow up with the NFL and have received no response. So I think that is just a thing of the past. The Dolphins on their own front, they are not challenging anything. Mike McDaniel said, hey, what does it do for me to look into that? And but, us in the media, we want to find out for you, the fans, and get some real answers here. But a quick hook is possible just because it is this new day and age. And as far as the offensive line is concerned, I mean, sure, you want to protect Tua because of his health, of course. But, hey, if he's playing football, he's playing football. If he's cleared, he's going in there to play football. So I know Mike McDaniel talked about trying to get him to better protect himself as well. So what does that mean for a quarterback? Sometimes it's getting the ball out quicker, making your reads. I know you don't want to bring it up, but he did have Jalen Waddle on that play where he did take the hit from Josh Tupou. So if he sees that, gets the throw out there, then a lot of this is avoided. So some of it's on Tua. The offensive line has really been a disaster in the game since. You've had Teron Armstead out. Austin Jackson still has not returned from injured reserve with that ankle injury. Greg Little was holding it down for a little bit at right tackle. It was encouraging for a while. It has not been in recent games. And then when Teron Armstead went out in the Jets game, then you tried to stay with Little on the right side, even though more of his career experience is on the left side. And Brandon Shell, called up from the practice squad, the veteran tackle, all of his experience was on the right side to that point. They just plugged him in on the left side, so that was new to him. He had to flip everything. Then you flip it back this week with Armstead and Jackson still not there. You try Shell on the right side, Little on the left side, and then it still didn't work. It was just still a bunch of more pressure. I know Liam Eichenberg has struggled as well. The offensive line has struggled to pick up stunts, which Minnesota did tremendously. Those games and stunts up front. Guys twisting. It's hard to pick up for linemen, and it seems like it's especially hard for this Dolphins offensive line. So all these things factor in, and the Dolphins are really going to need to protect Tua and whoever's been at quarterback. It's been a struggle recently. Mike McDaniel said 1, if not 2, possibly could come back between Armstead and Jackson. Armstead has not been practicing. Jackson, he did return to practice last week for 2 of them, then kind of took the Friday off. That seemed to indicate he was not going to be ready by game day, and it turned out to be true. So maybe another week for each of them that gets them ready to go.
All right, and then people coming back, we've got to keep an eye on Skylar Thompson also with his thumb injury. I still think Teddy Bridgewater should be the number 2 quarterback, and I know that again Mike McDaniel made reference to that last week. It's a shame we didn't get to see more of Skylar. Look, Skylar might have been the best quarterback on the field last week, among himself, Teddy Bridgewater, and wow, I'm
Kirk Cousins.
Right, Kirk Cousins, yeah. So, has he done enough to be the number 2? Maybe he has, but I don't think Teddy has done enough to lose the number 2 job. So I will throw 2 questions to you. And I'll answer them first. I think Teddy, who should be number 2? I think it's Teddy. And should the Dolphins carry 3 quarterbacks on the active game day roster? I think they should. I know it takes away from another position. You can only have, 46? And if you have 3 quarterbacks, then you're going to be down 1 cornerback or 1 tight end or whatever. But Furones, they've had terrible luck with these quarterbacks. And to have Cedric Wilson as your backup again, I just don't think it's smart, at least for a couple of games, have three quarterbacks active. But what are your thoughts on who should be number two and whether they should have three quarterbacks active?
Hey, eventually this luck has got to change, right? I mean, how many games in a row? Now, I know these results are independent of one another, but eventually, come on, it's just the law of averages. It's got to come back to where you just are able to finish games like normal teams with the quarterback that you start. So it seems like Mike McDaniel, even though despite these recent occurrences, is sticking with, okay, the two active quarterbacks on game day. And to answer the first question, yeah, I would still stick with Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, I think we did see a lot of encouraging signs from Skylar Thompson, and I think that was probably why Mike McDaniel was correct in starting Skylar with the week of practice. It's very critical in his offense to have all those reps, just how complex the offense can be, how many different plays and formations there are, motions, and Mike McDaniel even said it was very encouraging to see how Teddy Bridgewater was mentally so locked in, I guess proving he never had a concussion, so he was able to recite plays when in a certain game that Mike McDaniel said he plays with his quarterbacks, and naming a formation, and then Teddy Bridgewater was on it every time, naming the right play that they were calling in the situation and whatnot. So, and you know, it was a struggle for him for quite a few series going through the third quarter. And then finally, when they had to mount a comeback, you saw a little bit of the fireworks start, and they had the fourth quarter momentum. We're going to talk about it later, but the Jalen Waddle fumble, I think that Dolphins team ends up driving down for a score there. You saw them drive down for the score on the drives before and after that, and I think they probably mount that comeback if that drive is completed. But yeah, I think you saw, despite the penalties that hindered the Dolphins' offense while Skylar was in there, you saw him moving the ball. You saw the way he was throwing with anticipation, knowing what was coming, and also made a play with his feet. You saw that, him pick up a first down that way. It was just devastating to see him get the Dolphins into the red zone and then have a penalty, bring them back on that 5 penalty drive, and then twice get into field goal range and have them knocked back. So I think you saw a lot of great signs from Skylar when he had the week to prepare as a starter. But I still say Teddy Bridgewater, he's your number 2 guy. You stick with him. He's got the experience. And then, hey, it's not bad that you have a guy like Skylar Thompson as your number 3.
Yeah. They're you know, it sounds foolish to say this, which means I shouldn't say it, right? I should just edit myself. But they have a good quarterback situation, right? You've got 3 guys that can play. They haven't all been healthy, and that's what I mean. It sounds foolish to say it, but they actually have 3 guys that can play. So that's a good quarterback situation, right?
And it's been proven. We've seen all 3. Every game, it's a different one.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it. All right, Furones, let's move on to our next topic and our next segment. And man, the offense, it's not scoring touchdowns on a regular basis. 16 touchdowns in 24 quarters, I believe is what the number is. And, the Baltimore game still stands out with those touchdowns they scored there in the fourth quarter. And so, look, we've talked about the offensive line problems. We've talked about the quarterback problems. They've only had one good rushing game. That was the Jets game. So the offense not scoring touchdowns on a regular basis, and this is why at the start of the season I was saying that I think the defense is going to have to carry the team early, because offense takes a while, and you have so much new in this offense with the new system and the new offensive coordinator and 2 new running backs and the new left tackle and the new center who is playing center for the first time. And Tyreek Hill is new to the offense, even though Tyreek is not a problem in any way, shape, or form, unless you're talking about the missing ping pong table. But anyway, I kind of make of the offense that it is going to take a while. You do have this revolving door of quarterbacks, and that doesn't help. But I just think it's going to take this new offense a while to get in sync. And you've just got so many of these moving parts. So that's really, to me, that's really the big thing with this offense not scoring touchdowns on a more regular basis, is that it just takes them some time to get familiar with each other and how things are going to operate and what should be happening. What your thoughts on the offense and the ability to score more touchdowns, or the need?
Yeah, you bring up some good points where early in the season we were hoping that this defense would be able to carry the team while the offense, maybe with all these moving parts, finds its way. And I think the defense maybe would have, had it not been for some of these injuries. I mean, you still don't have Byron Jones, and then Xavier Howard has struggled with that groin, and then the groins, plural, that has kept him out. And then now he's back from, so still probably not 100% because we still do see him a little bit behind on some plays in coverage, but I think he's going to get there. We saw something similar with him last year where he had a little injury patch, but then once he got it back about mid-season and he was back to himself, then you really saw the impact that he makes. So I think that will be an aspect, but you need Byron Jones on the other side to allow the defense to do everything that you want. But as far as the offense not scoring touchdowns, yeah, part of it, there's a lot of factors. Part of it is the inconsistent run game. You haven't seen that yet. Just really one game where you had Raheem Mostert run for 100 yards. So it has been a work in progress for Mike McDaniel, something that he has specialized in from his years in San Francisco, and he hasn't quite been able to emulate it. We saw flashes of it in that Jets game when Raheem Mostert ran for more than 100 yards, and we saw some of the creativity, like getting Tyreek Hill on the double reverse, and then Durham Smythe coming in under center, sneaking it in, and Tyreek Hill almost like the Deebo Samuel in San Francisco for a couple plays. Maybe we want to see some more of that, but I mean, he does have 50 receptions through 6 games, so you're getting him plenty involved in the passing game as well. The penalties, that's hindering this team because we saw it, that second drive last game. That was a case in point. Twice they're getting into and goal situations or inside the red zone, and then the penalty brings them back. You have 5 penalties in one drive, an illegal man downfield, 2 holdings, an offensive pass interference, and then a false start earlier. That's really inexcusable to have that many penalties on one series. And I think also the use of the tight end, including Mike Gesicki. I mean, once you get into the red zone, then that's how you want to score touchdowns. He's your big pass-catching target. So we saw it at the end where he had 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter against the Vikings. And granted, as you're mounting a comeback and you're playing from behind, playing more aggressive, and also this is a game where Durham Smythe was out, so there wasn't the same split that we've been seeing with Smythe getting more of the snaps in most games that both have played than Gesicki. But just once you get down into the red zone, come on, he's your 6'5", 6'6", long arm, can jump out of the building, pass-catching target. Go ahead and get him the ball in those red zone opportunities so he can make catches like the one we saw in Week 2 in Baltimore when he skied up there, nearly scraping the crossbar on the goalpost before his first gritty attempt. Which I don't know if that's in the show rundown, but a slightly improved one this time around, but still needs a lot of work. Maybe he'll just keep it to rehearsing it in his home, but those are all things. Getting the tight end involved, more consistent run game in the red zone. I think that'll start leading to more touchdowns.
Yeah, and look, I think Gesicki did the NFL's longest gritty too. I mean, that thing wrapped all the way down the sideline. I mean, he was on it now. He was on it.
We need to verify with Guinness or the league office to determine. I don't know who has that next gen stats or who keeps track of that. Elias Sports Bureau. Longest gritty.
Right, exactly. Somebody will have that answer. Somebody will have it. Hey, okay, so Furones, when we talk about the offensive issues and specifically during this 3-game win streak, we can't get away from offensive line. And we already talked about it for the injury standpoint, but we get this question off of Twitter, and this question is from @JFDad, and the question is, please asking for an upgrade with Liam at left guard. We have options: Dieter, Jones, free agents. Liam Eichenberg has struggled. You know, there's no doubt about that. He's there at left guard, and you know, we've seen clips of him getting shoved right back into the quarterback. We've seen clips of him having problems picking up the stunts or the twists. So it's an issue, but Furones, you know, at this point, you would have to think if the coaching staff thought they had another answer, they'd have gone to it. Robert Jones is there. Michael Dieter has guard capabilities, although he's been switched to center. I I don't think they're going to get a free agent offensive lineman. There could be another Brandon Shell out there or somebody like that. But and I say in the next week or two. I don't think they're going to do that. Later on it might become apparent that you have to go outside the roster. But right now, let's just say for the next couple of weeks, I think they're going to try to find their answer on the roster and through scheme. And so far, that's been unsuccessful. But I see Eichenberg staying there and the Dolphins just kind of crossing their fingers and hoping that something clicks. I don't see Robert Jones or anybody else, being promoted. We haven't seen it, even for one series or one quarter. So that makes me think they're just going to stick with Eichenberg and kind of gut it out and hope that things improve there. But your thought, can you scheme away from a left guard? I mean, the guy is pretty important.
Right, and then the defense is going to scheme to the left guard in pass protection and stunt at him, twist, and make him have to block elite pass rushers. So, yeah, it's a challenge. And I know we look at it from the outside. The fans do too. And these coaches, you tend to defer to them. They see these players in practice consistently and have been sticking with Liam Eichenberg. But you do have to wonder, how much better could it look if you tried a Robert Jones there? Michael Dieter, who is your backup center now, but he has experience, rookie year playing left guard, and he was all right. You got to wonder what you have there, and maybe try seeing it in the game. Liam Eichenberg has struggled, so I know the coaches, they see it in practice, so you tend to defer to them, but you do have to wonder just what it could look like if they try to mix something else up. Maybe it also had to do with just having so many moving parts already with the tackles in recent weeks. You didn't want to add another in Liam Eichenberg. So maybe once you do get healthy at tackle with Armstead and Jackson coming back, do they try to experiment with either Dieter or Robert Jones? Could be a thing there. Maybe that's what's been holding them back from making another move, having another moving part on the offensive line. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, good point by you, because you don't want to have all of these new moving pieces, because that clouds the issue even more. So, all right, in delving into this 3-game losing streak a little bit further, the defense, they're not producing turnovers on a regular basis. I thought they had a decent showing last game. They have the 53-yard touchdown run by Dalvin Cook, the 47-yard reception by Justin Jefferson, but for the most part, they did okay. But they're not producing those turnovers. And that takes us to our next Twitter question, and it comes from James J13. And the question is, when is the last day the team can activate Byron Jones from PUP or else put him on IR for the rest of the season? Byron Jones's clock is not ticking yet, because it doesn't start until they put him out there on the practice field. Then he has a 21-day window to either be activated or not be activated. He'd be done for the season. But Byron Jones's absence it's one of the biggest absences on the team, because that defense did so much, and it started with having X and Byron locking people down. It's not, Byron Jones's absence is not as significant as the quarterback, as Tua or Skyler or Teddy, but man, it's right up there with Teron Armstead. It might be a bigger absence than Teron Armstead, just because of everything that you do based on having Xavier Howard and Byron Jones there, and they haven't been able to find a solution to that one. I think the Byron Jones absence is one of those things that you see the results on the field in a lot of ways. And so it's the coverage, it's the things that the defense is allowed to do. And I've got to think that, Byron Jones and that defense being able to do what it does, producing those turnovers, the Byron Jones absence kind of prevents that. Now, I know he doesn't directly affect, Jalen Phillips getting a strip sack or anything like that, but indirectly, yeah, you can get coverage sacks. You can have things like that. So the defense has to get back to producing turnovers. They have to get back to playing complementary football, right? And we've seen it throughout the season and throughout the 3-game win streak, and that just makes life so much easier on your other units. If Thomas Morstead nails somebody down inside the 10, and now they have to drive 90 plus yards, and the defense gets a hold or the defense holds them. They have to punt, and the offense gets the ball in favorable field position, and that's complementary football. So I'm not trying to make too much out of the Byron Jones absence, but the effects of that, it just has fingers all over this team. So you on the defense not producing more turnovers, what do you make of that? What is the cause of it, and what's the solution, do you think?
Right. I mean, Byron Jones or no Byron Jones, it's still really inexcusable for this defense to only have one interception and none since the opening series of the season. First defensive series, you get the tip ball to Javon Holland in the end zone, interception, and you thought, oh boy, this defense is rolling again. This is what it's going to be like week in, week out, series after series, and it just has not happened again since. A couple of fumble opportunities. I know they had one, but then the Vikings got it back. But that's what's more concerning to me is then even more so than, okay, the offense not scoring touchdowns and getting into the red zone and being pushed back by penalties. This defense should have been more advanced than the offense. Even if you didn't have Byron Jones for the early part of the season, that's one piece. And it's a critical piece because, like you mentioned, Josh Boyer wants to employ all these blitzes, and when you don't have your 2 cover corners working, and 3 when you include Nick Needham, who also now is going to be out, then it's detrimental to what you want to do defensively. Byron Jones coming back at some point, that is only elevated, amplified now because of Needham's Achilles tear, which when everyone knows when you tear your Achilles, that costs you the season right there. So Mike McDaniel did say he will be put on IR. That was the latest update. And you have Keon Cross and also going through injuries. Now you've been inserting Noah Igbenogany, and he held up all right. You got to give him credit because I know there's a pile-on effect on Noah Igbenogany whenever he is not performing well through camp, and then give him credit for being ready. And Kirk Cousins was going after him when he was covering Adam Thielen. He made it clear back-to-back attempts. He was going after him, and there was one point where, Noah got consecutive pass deflections, and that was impressive to see him stand up outside of that pass interference at the end of the first half that put them in field goal range. He overall, I know everyone was saying he graded well, and the eye test also backs that up. But yeah, the defense getting back to forcing turnovers. They did have 11 3-and-outs in that win or in that loss against the Vikings. That was encouraging to see that they won a lot of aspects of the game. We saw pass losses or other games like even the Buffalo win where time of possession was against the Dolphins because they were giving up so much, allowing first downs, long drives to be sustained. So that part was fixed. Now get some turnovers, get some takeaways. That'll increase that complementary football aspect that we talk about. Now you get a turnover instead of a 3-and-out. They can't punt and bring you back all those yards. Now you get the ball where the offense was to begin. So that would be a huge boost if this defense can start getting some of those turnovers.
Yeah, and one more thing on the 3-game slide, Furones, you touched on this earlier, and it's the penalties. Where did that come from? Like, this thing just cropped up out of nowhere. Against the Jets, it was 11 penalties for 102 yards, and then last week, 10 for 97, I think it was. But you got almost 200 yards in penalties, 199 in 2 games, and this isn't a knucklehead team. And some of the penalties, that ineligible man downfield, okay, that's going to happen. But yeah, like the offensive pass interference and the false start and these kind of things, they're just so hurtful. And you talked about the drive last week where you have all the 5 penalties for 36 yards, and now instead of a field goal, you're punting. And so it's just one of those things that's just so frustrating, has nothing or very little to do with injuries. I don't think it has anything to do with injuries, because I can't recall like anybody who's in there for an injured player getting excessive flags where you go, well, that guy just shouldn't be there. I mean, that's not the case. You know, the Christian Wilkins roughing the passer last week, even though that was just a 1-yard penalty. But yeah, that's not caused by a new guy. Those are the things that they need to eliminate. So I don't know where this penalty thing came from. But what does Mike McDaniel do about it? I guess you just show video and you know, I don't know if you make guys run or do whatever, do push-ups or whatever you know you want to do. But it's just got to be a point of emphasis. I don't know that there's anything that the coaches can do in practice or anything like that, right?
You talk about the ineligible man downfield, those things are going to happen. How did Connor Williams get downfield that quickly on such a quick pass, as our Steve Svekis noted in the 20 things we learned in that game? I mean, it was a quick pass. He showed some Tyreek Hill speed or something to get 5 yards down the field that quickly with how quick the ball was released and got to the receiver. But, yeah, that was a killer drive. And now, the fans don't want to hear this, but this was one aspect where the Dolphins were strong under Brian Flores, always ranked highly in limiting penalties. It was one thing that would be near the top of the weekly press release is how well the Dolphins rank in keep staying away from penalties, which also kind of is a trademark of how boring those teams were, because that's kind of the biggest thing to highlight is we don't commit penalties. You know, are you good at anything else? They were good at forcing turnovers, getting sacks, more so than we are seeing with this year's defense. But what do you do, Mike McDaniel? What do you do? Do you bring back a TNT wall like Flo had when he started? I don't know, but a lot of these guys are the same guys. There has been some turnover on offense, which is where a lot of penalties do take place. But now the Dolphins, let me make sure I get this right. They are 4th in penalties with 43 and 7th in penalty yards at 331. So I know past several years they always used to rank bottom of the league, which is tops in the league when you invert penalties. So it's something you got to correct.
Yeah, it is. So, well, look, you know, all of these things have been contributing factors in the 3-game losing streak. And so we'll see if they can get this stuff ironed out this week. And that leads us into our next segment here. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're coming into town. And look, the Steelers are one of those teams where a couple of weeks ago you looked at them and you thought, there's not much going on there. But, you know, they just had the impressive victory against Tampa. They're at 2-4 now. Kenny Pickett, the rookie, came in there and he was playing for a while, but he sustained a concussion. Mitch Trubisky finishes off that game. So we'll see what happens at the quarterback position for them this week, what kind of success they can get. The Steelers are 0-3 against the AFC East. So, you know, maybe that's one thing working in the Dolphins' favor. But as you mentioned before, Brian Flores is back. We'll see if Minkah Fitzpatrick is back, right? But the Dolphins need a victory here for many reasons. Mostly to kind of reassure themselves that, you know, happier days are ahead. Things are getting back to normal. Tua is back. Maybe Tehran is back. We're starting to get back to who we were in the first 3 weeks of the season. And, you know, I'm thinking that we're going to see something close to that, something close to the Dolphins getting back to who they showed us they were in those first 3 games. But health is such a big thing. Byron Jones is not going to be back, but we'll see what happens elsewhere in that secondary where they're razor thin. But I think getting people back, Tehran and Tua, would be the first 2 that I would put my eyes on. And to me, that gets you back close to being on the winning track. What do you think needs to happen this week, Furones, as far as, you know, the Dolphins feeling better, aside from a victory, but feeling better, feeling things are on track heading into this game?
Yeah, you said it. This is one that they need to get. And it kind of lines up for them. You get the 2-4 Steelers. Granted, they did just come off an upset of the Buccaneers, but they had lost 4 in a row before that. And they haven't beaten any of the other AFC East teams, so you can't be the one to fall to them. But it's the get-right game. You need this one. It would be devastating if Sunday Night Football, when you bring back the 72 team, that's the other thing. You don't lose when you bring the 72 team in to celebrate. You have to win when you are honoring an undefeated team. You don't go and dishonor them by losing a football game, something that team did not do once in 17 tries. So, and I mean, you also don't want to lose with Brian Flores on the other side. That would be even more crushing for maybe not so much some of the players that still. I asked a couple of players yesterday how they're going to feel about Brian Flores being on the other side. A lot of them still have a lot of respect for him. I think Rob Hunt said, I'm going to probably say what's up to him. And Christian Wilkins said, hey, it's business as usual. We don't look at that as any kind of distraction. Just, hey, he's another coach on another team. But, yeah, just to get back from you lose 3 in a row. Hey, the Dolphins, if you said 3-3 at this point in the season, I think most people would have taken it. It was a very difficult stretch to begin, maybe kind of a wacky way to get there. I know I was saying I thought this team would start 1-3 and then start its winning streak and get on track and still get to this 3-3 mark. When I looked at the first 4 games and then thinking, okay, the Jets, they'll take that one. And the Vikings weren't a playoff team last year, home, while it's still early in the season and you have the heat and humidity. It didn't turn out that way. The Vikings actually are 5-1, looking very strong, and the Jets are 4-2 as well, looking a lot better than a lot of people thought. Although, yeah, it's an upstart kind of team. A lot of their recent draft picks seem promising. So, that franchise does seem to be going in the right track. But maybe no one really thought it would take off this quickly. But now you really do get to the soft part of the schedule, if you want to call it, because now these teams have proven that they haven't gotten off to the same surprising starts. When you look at Pittsburgh and then you get to Detroit and Chicago, both on the road. You have Houston on the other, or Cleveland first, then the bye, and then Houston takes you through November. 5 very winnable games. They have to win, if not all. I mean, at least 4 of those. I know it's the NFL, any given Sunday, all that, but you have to come out mostly on top of this stretch and then turn this thing around, get some momentum going back into that late December stretch where it does get tough with the back-to-back West Coast games at Buffalo, the Packers, and at New England on New Year's Day. So you need to build that momentum now through this stretch beginning Sunday night.
And Furones, before we get into our game prediction, we get this Twitter question from Let's Go Fins, and it kind of touches on, we've been talking about players returning. Steve Ross returns, Brian Flores returns, but here's our question, and it comes from Let's Go Fins, and it's not a question, it's actually a statement. It says, I do think we have more wins than 3 if Tua never got injured. And I'm down with that. I would agree with that. But what is this team? That's kind of what I would like to get into, because I'm a person who says you are what your record says you are. And so that's a harsh reality, saying that this is a 500 team, the way that they started out and those impressive victories. But, you are what your record says you are. And so if Tua never got injured, yeah, you probably do have 4 wins. You could have 5 wins. You could be a 5-1 team at this point. But the point is, Tua did get injured, and you weren't able to overcome it. And we've heard there's a common saying in the NFL that you win games with numbers 23 through 53 just as much as you win games with numbers 1 through 22. And so maybe that's part of this thing here with Tua being injured, that you couldn't overcome it. I think the roster is in decent shape, but we're seeing, like, at the offensive line, there are some holes there, and there's not a lot of depth. You flip it over to the secondary, they've showed a lot of depth. With the injuries, X missed a game and a game and a quarter, I guess it was, right? And then Byron Jones has obviously been out, and they just sustained, as you said, the Nick Needham Achilles loss. And we'll see what happens with Kader Kohu, who had the oblique and missed last game. Keon Crossan just had the knee injury and left last game early. But the secondary, that roster, that part of the roster is pretty deep. Offensive line, not so much. So when we talk about Let's Go Fins saying they have more than 3 wins if Tua didn't get injured, you could still have more than 3 wins, right? Is that a reflection on the roster to you, or is that just luck? The Baltimore victory and the football gods give it and take it away. What do you think?
I agree. I think this team would be better off right now. I mean, you say 4 or 5 wins. I wrote in yesterday's story, there's an argument that could be made. They would be 6-0 had Tua never gotten injured. That Thursday night game on the road is always tough. So even if he does finish that off, it's still tough. But hey, start of the fourth quarter or right before the fourth quarter, they were leading in that game. Was it 15-14 for a brief moment? The Jets game, it was still a game going into the fourth. I mean, had a chance at the lead with a field goal it missed, and then that's when the 3 consecutive touchdowns were scored. Obviously, on Sunday, they had a chance to beat the Minnesota Vikings. So, yeah, I mean, they were in each of these games, and if you have your number one quarterback, then sure, you could say all of these could have been flipped results. So, yeah, I would say, and Mike McDaniel hasn't wanted to use it as an excuse. He is the coach of the team. He should say that. The players on the team should say that you can't use injuries, quarterback situation, quarterbacks going in and out as an excuse. We are outside of the team, so I will say that for them. Yes, this team would have a lot better of a record right now had a lot of these things not happened, specifically to his injury. But it's the hand you're dealt. Now you're 3-3, whether because of it, in spite of it, or irrelevant, then it is what it is. Now you are getting Tua back. He's participating this week in practice as a starter, and it is assumed that he will start on Sunday night. So now you go forward with it and see if it turns around. All
right. It's prediction time, and we know that I am in last place. I'm firmly in last place. I believe in our standings at 2-4. So, yeah.
Pound your chest to that.
Right. Good job by me. Yeah, good job by me. Look, here, looking at this game, yes, with Tua back, I expect there to be just kind of a good vibe going all throughout the team, not just offense, but I think all throughout the team. Again, we'll see how many players come back. If Tua and Teron come back, I feel very good about the offense. Would still like to see that running game do more, and I think everybody would, because the running game is really only existed for one game, and so that would help. You would like to see the defense produce some turnovers. You would like to see special teams shore up some things. And look, I'll say this also about Jason Sanders. I know he's taken a lot of heat here recently, but his 3 misses have all been from 50 yards or more. One was blocked, and 2 he just missed. But he's perfect on everything else. He's missed an extra point also. So it's a disappointing season from that standpoint. But when your only misses are from 50 or more, okay, I can kind of understand that. So you need to get these things working. You need, a run game, Tua, Teron, some turnovers, shore up special teams. I don't know how much of that gets done this week, Furones, but I think the Dolphins win, and I'm going Dolphins 24-20.
Okay, I like that pick. In fact, I like it so much, I'm picking the same score. We're actually channeling Tony Romo here. I don't know if you saw, but in the Bills-Chiefs game, he said early in the game, I don't think there will be as many fireworks as people think. This has the makings of a 24-20 type game. It's been all over all the NFL meme channels and everything. And then what ends up happening? 24-20 is the final. So Tony Romo called it in that game. You're calling it in this game, and I'm calling it as well, 24-20. I think it will be a little bit more of a dominant effort than that score indicates. Obviously, that indicates it's coming down to the end, final possession. But I say it's a scenario where it's 24-13. They get there because they kind of put it away with a field goal, and then the Steelers end up, so now we're talking 24-13. That's 11. The Steelers get a late touchdown, final seconds, and they get the 2-point conversion. Or no, I guess they would go for 2. So how can it be 24-20? Oh, no. My prediction's off. But anyway, they score late. They don't pick up the onside kick, and then that's how it ends. Dolphins come away victorious, celebrating the 1972 team. With Brian Flores on the other side, Stephen Ross is there, all the hoopla. And when I look at the Steelers, they have a good receiving core. I do like that with Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. The problem is getting the ball to them, the quarterback situation. They've had Mitchell Trubisky, and then Kenny Pickett comes in. Now he's got concussion protocol to go through. Finally, an opponent's quarterback has to go through concussion protocol. So finally, that seems like it's karma kicking in for the Dolphins after all this that they've had to endure regarding concussion protocol. And then the defense doesn't seem to be the same. I mean, did look good last game, but I think that's also a lot of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers struggles that we've seen of late, and maybe distractions around that team. But with T.J. Watt not in there, Minka Fitzpatrick, he was out last game, still dealing with a knee injury. So I end up saying Dolphins 24-20. They come away victorious, and this is the win that starts springing them in the right direction after 3 straight losses.
All right. And look, and Furones, because it's all about us, I hope your scenario is correct because we're going to be on deadline this game. So if the Dolphins have a comfortable lead in the fourth quarter, baby, I'm all for that. I'm all about that.
We're getting this in the paper?
What is a paper? I only know of online. I don't know this paper thing you speak of. The newspaper. What is that? What is that?
I think our deadline is before the game begins, before the game kicks off. So I don't know about that.
Exactly. All right, folks, that's it for this week's edition of Dolphins Deep Dive. That's your boy, David Furones. I'm your boy, Perk. We will talk to you next week. Same place, same time. We'll see you.